Okay, it's about 20 minutes to 1. I think most everybody's had a chance to get a little bit. There are plenty of cookies, still some sandwiches. If you're still hungry, it would be fine for you to just go and continue to munch and enjoy while you're listening to Adam's last lesson that he has planned. But hasn't it been a delightful time? We've had just a wonderful experience. Faughns just you can tell they're widely read and very informed, very knowledgeable on the subject. I mean, just beside the experience that you guys are having in raising your own children, but that deep biblical appreciation and connecting it with the challenges that go along with raising children in the 21st century is pretty awesome. So we do appreciate y'all coming. What we're going to do is I'm going to turn it over to Adam and let him say some of the things that he'd like to share with you. And then I'm going to ask Brian White, one of our elders, to come and kind of close us out at the end. Have a few things that he wants to say. But again, we really appreciate you being here. And we have recorded these sessions. The ladies' sessions we haven't put up yet, but we have a new YouTube channel. And so you can go on YouTube and look up Crittenden Drive Church of Christ. And we're kind of getting things kicked off this weekend. We've been pretty tied to YouTube over the years, and we're going to try to break away a little bit. And it seems like more people do have access to YouTube. So we'll be transitioning in that way, and so this has been a great way to get started, and Mark McAndrews has helped us out a lot in the auditorium, and we want to get it to the point people can just pull up the church website, CrittendenDriveChurchofChrist.com. It's a long title, but you just pull it up and be able to watch our worship services right there every Sunday morning, Sunday night, classes on Wednesday night. We'll have those there for you to be able to enjoy. But we appreciate especially our visitors being with us, and we want to encourage you to come anytime that you can, and tell your friends we have good classes and that we try to do for all ages on Sunday morning and also on Wednesday night. And so again, we're really thankful for the Faughns coming and being with us. And so I'll turn it over to Adam to get us out of here.
We have really enjoyed being here. What I heard in the introduction was, let's see if Adam can compete with Subway cookies. And you're going, no, he can't. We have really enjoyed the weekend. Appreciate the invitation and the hospitality. And either you all have paid attention or you just haven't snored while you're sleeping. Or either one, we're thankful. We hope that the things that we've shared have encouraged you. And if you were here last night, I want to mention again sort of how we began last night and begin this final lesson the same way. We didn't come this weekend because we are experts, because we have everything right, because we made every correct choice or anything else. We have made pretty much every mistake you possibly can make in parenting, several of them more than once, a few several times. But we enjoy doing this still, in part because it helps us, frankly, to think through these things. But also we hope it encourages you to know that you're not the only couple, not the only family who has questions, who has difficulties, who struggles from time to time. And if you get nothing else, have gotten nothing else out of this weekend than just the encouragement of knowing that you're not alone, I hope that's enough in many ways for you to keep going, to keep doing the very best godly job you can do in trying to raise children to love Him and to honor Him. This last session kind of has a couple of different titles. The one in the flyer and the Facebook posts and things is parenting against the grain, and that's that's the overall emphasis, is the simple fact. It was mentioned, I believe it was in the men's class last night. They started to run together now. It's like, I had enough of these sessions with last night, this morning, where I don't know. But somebody mentioned in a comment, I believe it was last night, that if we are parenting according to godly principles, one of the things we're telling our children is, you're going to look different. But sometimes we as parents need to remember that we are going to look different. That the overall home is going to look different than just the world around us, than the culture around us. And when that comment was made in the class, again, I believe it was last night, it was a great point, a great comment. And what I said in response to it, I said, it's sad, but it's true. You may look different from other Christian families. And that's sometimes really a hard pill to swallow. And it's not that you're trying to be better than thou or holier than thou or anything like that. But it's when we strive for godliness and strive for godly excellence, it's going to look different. And so what I want to spend a few moments on this afternoon, I almost forgot what time it is, I almost said this morning, is they really are starting to run together. Is thinking about one specific area where godly families, godly parenting is going to look very different. And the overall concept is that we're seeking holiness in things that we are trying to do as a family. Now, this is meant to be more of a class session thing, so let me just ask and just, maybe the ladies will respond. I asked guys questions, it was like, which I hope the live stream caught that the way I meant for it to, the deadpan face. It was like, we don't talk in church. When you hear the words sacred or holy, what comes to mind? Just in general. This is just like the guys' class. We're not talking. We just got to eat cookies. It's different. Okay. Purity. That's one of the first kind of synonyms or concepts that comes to my mind. What else comes to mind? Something that's not like something else. Somebody else said something like you. You're weird? Oh, revered. That's It's been good to be with you this weekend. Although that actually is sort of a correct answer too. They both are. Yeah, those ideas, distinct, different. You've probably heard preachers and others say, you see the word holy in the Bible. The idea is sort of set apart. And sometimes you get really, really specific. You could say it's set apart for a specific purpose or for a specific reason. You read through the Old Testament, for example, and so many things are described as holy, especially dealing with the priests. The garments are holy, the tabernacle was holy, the temple was holy, and all of those things had a connection to God. But also one of the reasons they were called holy, or described as holy, I should say, is because they were different from, set apart from, other garments, for example, but they were set apart for a specific reason. They weren't just different because they just looked different, although they did. They were set apart and maybe looked different or were used for a different purpose to remind them that everything about this is very, very different. And so the reason I want to begin that way and kind of go in that direction is if we're going to parent against kind of the cultural grain or against the grain of the culture, we have to, as parents, but then also instilling in our children, we have to seek to instill in them or try to instill in them the same things that God calls holy, we have to treat as holy, even if the world doesn't. The world doesn't really have a concept of holiness, sacredness, set apartness, weirdness, reverence. They may know the term. Maybe get used in a sentence every once in a while. But as far as how God would describe it, we are very much parenting against the grain. And so I want to think with you just for a few moments this afternoon about some different areas of our lives as families, especially as parents, where we need to try to instill in our children certain things that God says are holy. that we need to try to help our children see them as holy as well. First of all, worship is holy. If you go back to the Old Testament, and especially some of those books that a lot of people don't like to read very much, like Leviticus. Leviticus has been called the daily Bible reading murderer. Some of you will get that later. Those books that just describe lots of things that have to do with worship. How often do you read the word holy or holiness in books like that? When I preached in Nashville, we had a lady that worshiped there, an older lady, brilliant Bible student. I mean, I was intimidated preaching to her, seriously. I mean, it was unbelievable how much the lady knew, the depth of her knowledge, etc. And she came up to me one time and said, "Do you know what my favorite book of the Bible is? I'm expecting a gospel, maybe James, something like that." I said, "No," she goes, "it's Leviticus." And I was like, okay, I knew you were a little bit weird in some ways. But then she said, "Do you know why?" I said, "I would like to know, because I don't like mold." And that's in Leviticus a lot. She said, "It's because it reminds us of holiness." And I was like, "Oh, that's a good reason." That doesn't make it my favorite book, but it's a good reason. But you read through a lot of those sections of the Old Testament that sometimes we kind of either run through or skip over that deal with worship. And it's remarkable how much those things are tied to the concept of holiness. Just by way of example, if you read through Leviticus chapter 16, other similar passages or parallel passages that deal with the Day of Atonement, do you remember that the priests who were considered holy had to bathe in a certain way, had to put on certain clothes that had been washed in a certain way, and only then could they do certain things that had to do with worship, and that was only on one day of a year. That's how seriously the sacrifices and that part of worship was taken under the Old Testament. Now, I'm not suggesting that we have to go back to, that level of exacting detail. I'm not trying to say that. But the mindset is exactly the same. When it comes to worship, that's where our mind should be. That this is something that is that important. Maybe that we take a bath when we come. No. I'm sorry. I have terrible jokes, I know. But I'm tired too. But the mindset of this is something different from everything else in the week. This is something very, very special. These, few minutes or an hour or whatever it is, however long your worship services typically last, they are different from every other minute of the week in various of ways. You're thinking, now wait a second. This could be a Sunday morning sermon. This is supposed to be a parenting seminar. What does this have to do with parenting? If we don't teach our children that concept, who's going to? Nobody is going to. You say, well, they're Bible class teachers. Well, to some degree, yeah. Scott will in sermons. To some degree, yeah. The elders may get up and say something from time to time. To some degree, yeah. But nobody can truly instill that in our children except the parents. Because they see not just that we show up, or not just we get in the car at the same time on Sunday morning, but they see that we are treating this as something very important, very distinct, very different from anything else in our lives. And they see, especially as they've watched us over, not just a few weeks, but a few months and a few years, they see if mom and dad really treat this as something that's truly special or just kind of something we do. There is a huge difference between what some people like to label as cultural Christianity and Christianity. Cultural Christianity is we just kind of go because we always go. Or we live in a part of the country, and we do, where a pretty good number of people still quote unquote go to church. And so it's just kind of the thing to do. Maybe not everybody does it, but it's not that out of the ordinary if you go to church, so we just kind of do. Well, that's a good thing in some ways. I mean, I'd rather live in that part of the world than some other places in the world, for sure. But there's a huge difference in that and worship being something truly special. This isn't just something we show up for. This is something very different. We teach our children that in a lot of ways. We talked to them about it. When our kids were really small, we had a little book. Thankfully, it was little. The name of the book was Thank God It's Sunday. I forgot the name of the writer, which is amazing. I read it to them pretty much every Sunday morning. I'm a guy. I get ready quickly. As long as I can tie my tie, I'm pretty much done. I'm good to go, you know. And so the kids are kind of finishing up, getting ready, maybe still putting their shoes on. They're 4, 5, 6, 7 years old. And I read this book to them so often that to this day they can quote most of it. And it was not the greatest book in the world in some ways, but it was a book that didn't just say, hey, we're going to church, but it talked about why, when we're there, why are they going to pass these trays and drink some grape juice? You know, what's the deal with that? You know, why are we singing? Is this because it sounds good, or is it something? It was the why behind what we're getting ready to do, and it instilled in our children. I hope it was part of instilling in our children that we're not just doing this because we've always done it. We're also not just doing it, notice the word just because God said to do it, so I'm going to do it. Now that's part of it for sure, please hear that. But we're doing it because it's special. And we want to honor Him. And they need to see that. We also instill this in them by leading by example. When we're in worship, you know, if usually Scott preaches for 28 minutes and this morning sermon is 32 minutes and Daddy's going, what do the kids think worship actually is? It's boring. Or it's supposed to be about my schedule. Or about what I want. Instead of, this really is something that's special. When someone's praying, and the children know that Daddy's quiet during that time. This is something where Daddy's just very still. Something important must be going on here for Daddy to be, because you've noticed this weekend, Daddy's kind of jittery and stuff, but when we're praying, Daddy's very still. Something's going on here. Are you all passing trays for What's Up, or still doing rip and sip? Okay. Sorry. That's what it is. Let's just what they are. But however you're doing that, to still the individual cups, that's fine, whatever. Notice how I just made kind of a joke about it. Do they see, even with that when Mommy puts that piece of bread in her mouth, even though she's got a thing, that she's thinking something's going on up here. It really isn't just rip and sip. It's, man, I hope they don't leave the next prayer for a couple of moments, because Mommy's got something. In fact, Mommy just shed a tear. What's going on? It's leading by example and showing those things. We can also train our children before and during worship. We talked about family Bible time this morning, and in the guys session I mentioned something else. A lot of families at worship have things they bring for their children to do. When your kids are very, very small, if your kids are very small, I would just suggest, there's no Bible verse that says this is the way it has to be, but if at all possible, bring things for them to occupy their hands or whatever that have something to do with God. A Bible story book of some kind that's quiet, not one that actually makes the animal sounds from the ark while the preacher's preaching. That's a little weird. But I know families, we didn't really do this specifically, but I know families who actually have like a bag, like maybe during the week when they go to school, they've got their school bag, but they've got a Sunday bag. And that Sunday bag has a couple Bible story books in it or something. And that's their Sunday bag. And that bag talks about God. That's a wonderful training that this is something different. That this isn't just going to school like you did on Monday morning. This is something different. It's even got different books in it. And maybe they have their own little copy of God's Word in there as well. But, whatever we can do to train them. And then making sure, obviously, that we are at worship helps to train them. I would suspect that anybody who would come to a seminar on a Friday night and a Saturday probably doesn't just, miss services all the time. Okay, so I know I'm probably, speaking to people who this isn't really a problem for. I hope I am. But let me just say this also. Don't give your children any excuse to think that because something in life changes, we can begin to miss worship. For example, how about vacation? Don't give your children the idea that when you go on vacation, you can take a vacation from worshiping God. Still find a congregation to worship with if possible. I know there are some places in the country and for sure in the world where that's almost impossible, where there aren't congregations for miles and miles and miles and miles and miles around. But you have live streaming if that's what you have to do. But teach your children. Look, we're going to Washington, D.C. We did that a few weeks ago. We found a congregation in Virginia and went and worshiped with them. It was great. Even got a tour of the Pentagon of the thing. I'm not sure. You put those two things together, you can make all kinds of weird things about me. But the kids understood that's what we're going to do. Now, that congregation didn't have Sunday night services. We actually got kind of caught in traffic about 6 o'clock Sunday evening. So we kind of live streamed central service through the car. We worshiped in Washington, D.C. traffic, which was not smart. But it taught our kids, we're going to do everything we can and make sure we do that. Now, there's all kinds of things that fit with that. And by the way, that point's the longest. Don't get worried. But worship is holy. And we teach our kids that. Number 2, teach them that the church is holy. The church is holy. In the guys' session last night, we talked about things I want my kids to know before they leave home. One of those things is I want them to know the glory of the church. Not just that the church is an organization or institution or something like that, but it's a beautiful, glorious thing. Here we're calling it a holy thing. It is tragic how many young people see and hear their parents sing and talk about how great God is at worship and sing to Him and then have roasted elder and broiled preacher for lunch. That's a tragedy because it's teaching them that what they did there has no connection with what they're doing anywhere else. And it really wasn't that special because it wasn't what I wanted. It wasn't what I wanted to hear, or the song leader went too slow. How does he lead that song every week? Isn't he tired of it? Farther along, we will know all about it because we've sung it every week, okay? Or do we teach them that the church, the people of the church, the price of the church, the beauty of the church is a holy, holy thing? Here's some ways to help with that. Number 1, talk more about what is right with the church than what is wrong with the church. Now, as your children get older, I think it's okay to let them know that there are things that churches deal with. Elders have to make very difficult decisions. Kids need to know that those men have great responsibility and strain because of some of those things. Kids need to know maybe when there's a difficulty going on in church, and here's how we're going to pray about that and think about that. But let them know that the vast majority of the time, that's the exception. The church is good. Jesus died for it. Even if the people were trash, Jesus died for it. But let them also know that there are a whole lot more good people and activities and programs and works in the church than there are problems and issues and difficulties. Because if all we were telling them is how terrible it is, why would they ever want to be a part of it when they're 35 and 40 and 45 years old and now they're the ones supposed to be making decisions and doing things? I wouldn't want that either, would you? But I want them to see it's wonderful too. Focus on the divine side of the church and how that is perfect. People mess it up, okay? And yes, I'm a people. I mess it up. Jesus hasn't messed any of it up yet, and He won't. Teach your kids about how when Jesus died on the cross, yeah, it's for our sins. It's also to purchase the church. Teach them how He, as the head of the church, never makes a mistake. Every rule, every boundary, however you want to put that, He's laid down is absolutely perfect. Teach them those divine things. And then also teach them about the holiness of the church by helping them be involved in the lives of various people at the church. By that I mean not just their own little group. And by the way, that starts with us. It's really easy, for maybe the people you sit right by at church to almost become its own little mini congregation. It's the only people I ever talk to are the 4 or 5 families that sit like right here because that's why we sit together. We like each other, and the kids begin to see that. So then just the youth group only talks to each other, and then just this little group only talks to each other, and this little group only talks to each other. No. you help your children see you and you encourage them to get to know that 85-year-old person who doesn't talk to that many people, but who's got some really cool stories to share. You help them when they're 16, 17 years old to lean down and talk to that 3-year-old who's looking way up and going, "How are you today?" Man, you just made that 3-year-old's kid. I mean, you made that kid's life, excuse me. If a 17-year-old boy leans down and has a conversation with that kid, their day is made. You help them interact with people of different, and by the way, you do that by example too. You don't be afraid to talk to people who are older than you. You don't be afraid to talk to those little kids, those teenagers. Even if they're running the slalom through the hallways around the walkers, you talk to them and you encourage them. Number 3, teach your children that your family is holy. Your family is holy. Your family, my family, is a very small unit. It may be, you may be single. You may be here because you're thinking about the future or something, or you may just be empty nesters. There's 2 of you, maybe a family of 3, 4, 5, 6. Who here has the most kids? Might have 4 kids here. 5? So 4. So families of 6. Big as we go. Okay. I'm always more of a keep counting. So I go like. I was a camp counselor one time, and first I didn't know. I knew a couple of the kids that went to church where I was at, but didn't know the rest of them. So the first night is kind of getting to know the kids. Hey, introduce yourself. And what I had the boys do was I said, tell me your name, tell me where you're from, and tell me one weird fact about yourself. And of course, most of the boys are like, my name's Adam, I'm 12, and I like Nintendo, which is not a weird fact because you're 12. Okay, I got you. Okay, this one little boy, I can't remember his name because all I remember is the fact. I'll just use my own name. I'm Adam. I'm from Kentucky, and I'm one of 19 kids. And he wasn't kidding. His family fostered and adopted so many children. He was one of 19. Now, he was like, I think the 18th of 19, and his oldest sibling was like 40, and he's like 12. But I was like, you win the interesting fact award forever. I mean, I'm never asking this question again. You've won. But no matter what size your family is, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever it is, that's still a very small unit compared to a congregation, compared to a community, compared to the world. But it matters to God. Your little family unit matters to God. He has set you apart as a family. Family is huge throughout Scripture, no matter the size of it. If it weren't important, God wouldn't have created it. God would not have created marriage. He would not have placed the responsibility, of raising children inside of that relationship. He would not have created that if it wasn't a big deal. It was His idea. And so, while we should never idolize our families, in other words, we shouldn't put our families above the Lord, there is also a sense in which your family is holy and is sacred, and children need to be taught that from an early age. And that helps us then, by the way, with a whole lot of areas. That helps with things like discipline. That we're doing this to glorify God. Not just because Mommy and Daddy have a rule. We're doing this because this is something special. And you are trying to instill with them that you are part of something that's very, very special. But part of what holds that together, or part of what makes that special, is that there are boundaries around this. And boundaries that hold those things together. And standards that hold those things together. Children need to be shown that the marriage is sacred. That Mommy and Daddy, they're going to struggle from time to time. And any 2 people that live that close together for very long, there's going to be struggles, there's going to be disagreements. There's going to be times where the noise level is a little louder than normal from Mom and Dad's bedroom. It sounds kind of, ah! And that's probably going to happen from time to time. But they need to know that this is more than just living together. This is more than just some agreement. They need to know that God is the central focus of all of it. And that then pushes down to them being raised in a family. That plays itself out in every aspect of our lives. That we'll worship. It will change how we choose to entertain ourselves. If our family is holy, we're not going to watch things, listen to things that would besmirch that holiness. Again, it's going to change the discipline, the type of discipline we administer. It's going to change many of the conversations we have, because we're going to talk about things of God and things that are important. Number 4, teach your children that they are holy. That they are holy. Now, I don't mean in that they are God. In other words, that they are the center of everything. But you don't need me to tell you that we have a generation, and really we're on generation 2, if not 3, who have been told or are being told that they despair of life. Often they have physical dangerous activities, psychologically dangerous activities, and part of the reason is because they're told you're not really anything beyond just flesh and bones, and then you're going to die, and that's it. That's all this really is kind of get out of life what you want from it, suck all the marrow out of life, because that's really all it is, and then that's it. Let us eat and drink from tomorrow we die. Right? Teach your kids that God has placed His image right on them. That they have a soul. And that soul's going to last forever. And what they decide to do in that flesh and bones matters too where that soul is going to live forever. Tie those things. It does mean we tell them that they're special in some ways. When they do good things, we encourage them in that. But it also needs to be honest. Son, you can do anything. No, he can't. He can't. Honey, you can do anything. No, she can't. Now, can they do some amazing things? You better believe it. And I believe they will. But we need to make sure that what we say is actually honest. That we actually build them up in ways where they can be built up and have that right kind of esteem. On the other side of that, we have raised generations that are told you can do anything and then find out they can't. And that's a dangerous world to live in. And since we've told them they're all winners and they all get trophies because, they can breathe, then when they can't do something, we wonder, why do they turn to very dark activities? Why do they become the bully? Why do they turn to drugs or sexual transformation? And of course, ultimately, why they take their own lives. It's not the only reason, but it's a reason. It's because we've built things up in them that simply are not true. And they figured out they weren't true. But children don't need to hear just that they can do everything. No, what they need to hear more than anything is that they are holy in the sight of God, who loves them with an eternal and a perfect love. And that within that, they can do amazing things. It may not be things the world thinks is amazing. But if God links, what they do, loves what they do, and that's a good thing. We teach them how to deal with downturns in life, which they will have, no matter how much we might want to protect them. But we teach them to handle those things trusting in God. You've given them a gift for life. And you've given them a gift because they're going to face more downturns in life, but they're going to know I'm okay, not because I know how to handle this, because I know the one who does. He loves me. He will care for me. He will help me. His word will guide me. We teach them that all of them is holy. Their body, their soul, their mind, their thinking, everything. That no matter what they face, they know that God is holding all of that together. And that all of it is special to Him. I've mentioned this already this week, and I'll mention this very briefly here. But we can, if we're not careful, because we love God, because we love coming to church, and we love spiritual things, if we're not careful, we can go to the other extreme of only talking about the spirit and the soul and those sorts of things, and it's almost as if God doesn't care about the physical. God cares about all of us and all all of our children. And they need to see that everything about them is important to Him and should honor Him in all ways. Now, you can add to that list, I have no doubt. But you take just those things, worship, the church, the family unit, your child, and their own person, their own body, and you try to instill in your children that those things are holy, they're different, they're weird, no, they're reverent, they're set apart. You are parenting against the cultural grain. In fact, you're going 180 degrees the other direction. Because what the world wants to tell your kids is, one, there is no God, or if He is, He doesn't care what you do all that much. He's just kind of a doting grandfather He's going to let you into heaven no matter what. That's about the best thing. The world is going to tell our kids, your parents are a bunch of idiots. They're backward. They're foolish. They're dumb. They're out of step. They're on the wrong side of history. They have no idea what's going on. You do you. And what a Christian parent has to tell his child, her child, constantly is, you do God. It is not about you. Every decision a parent makes, at the very basic level, should never have as its basis, how will other people think about this? Every decision should have, will this help my child glorify God? That's parenting. But it's parenting against the cultural grain. I hope this weekend has encouraged you to some degree. Leah and I have enjoyed being here. We're not going to, as soon as the prayer's over, we're not going to run out and get in our cars. If you got questions or anything, we'd love to stand around and talk, eat another cookie. Can you tell I like Subway cookies? They're good, okay? They're really good. But we don't have all the answers. But if nothing else, before we leave in a little while, if you just need somebody to come up to and just say, hey, we're struggling, can you listen to our story? Yes, we will, we can. Because that's what we're here for, is just to encourage and help and hopefully give you some tools and some thoughts. And if nothing else, as I said a few minutes ago, if nothing else, the knowledge of knowing that if you are fighting this fight, you're not alone. There are others of us who are trying to and failing more often than we frankly want to admit, but who want so desperately children and young people to love God above everything else. And to all of you who are parents, grandparents, elders, Bible class teachers, who just are doing your best to help kids love God, thank you. And praise God for every one of you. You deserve honor beyond anything this world will ever give you for what you're trying to do. Thank you very much.
We didn't know whether to clap in church or not either.
We're in a fellowship hall, it's okay.
Yeah. So, on behalf of the elders, we want to thank everyone for spending your weekend here. For the last 12 to 18 months, we've had several different parents come to us as an eldership and ask for help. We realize it's difficult out there, and that you are totally going against culture and what the world is telling you is important, and what we're instilling in our kids. And that foundation that we're laying is so highly important. And so we know it's a struggle. We know it's not popular all the time, but it's the right thing to do, and it's the godly thing to do. And we just appreciate Adam and Leah and you spending your weekend with us. That part of the plan started coming into place, and And we appreciate what you've done for us this weekend. A lot of good information. A lot of information I wish I'd had a while back, as my kids are kind of out of the house now. But guys, we just need to lean on each other as we raise our children and lean on the church to help in that. And the eldership wants to do whatever we can to help. We also are going to start a parenting class. That's going to start in 2 weeks. On September the 17th, we'll start a parenting class. I'll be teaching that class, and we'll have more details on that, but it'll last at least a quarter through the end of the year. But just to give us more of a chance to talk as parents and to be together and study together and study some of these things we've talked about this weekend together. So just encourage you to be a part of that. And if you are visiting, we appreciate you being here. And we are going to have a prayer. We're just going to pray for our families. So if you'll bow with me, we'll dismiss in a prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we humbly bow before your throne, and we're just so thankful for this opportunity that you've blessed us with this weekend. We're thankful for Adam and Leah and their abilities to teach and express your words and to give us insight on parenting. And dear Lord, we realize that nobody's going to do it perfectly, and we realize that. But we also pray for strength. We pray for your strength as Christian parents as we raise our children in a world that is turning away from Christianity. And we just pray that our light would shine, that your light would shine through us to our children, and that their light would shine through to those around them. And dear Lord, that all the actions that we do would just be to glorify you. And dear Lord, we know your church. We know we're thankful for it. We're thankful for your son that came and died for us and to purchase that church and to give us a chance to spend eternity with you. And dear Lord, we pray as parents that we're putting that foundation in of our children, that they can see through our lives how important you are to us, and that we give them that foundation. We give them the importance of building that relationship, that they have that relationship with you, not just through their parents, that they are developing their own. And dear Lord, just watch over us and guide us. Help us to be better workers for thee, and help us to be stronger. And in all things we do, may we glorify you. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.